The Russian Civil War, initiated in 1917, marked the dramatic conclusion of a tumultuous period in the history of the Russian Empire. During this time, the Tsar was deposed, paving the way for the establishment of the world's first communist state, amid the backdrop of the relentless onslaught of World War I. The Russian Revolution, particularly the October Revolution in 1917, not only symbolized the seizure of the Russian state, but also solidified Bolshevik control, setting the stage for the ensuing Civil War. The determining factors in the outcome of the Civil War were intricately tied to the weaknesses of the White forces, foreign intervention, their pre-war unpopularity, and the effective leadership of the Reds under Trotsky. While many historians acknowledge the military prowess of the White Army, they attribute its failure to internal weaknesses. Conversely, many scholars argue that foreign intervention, while initially supportive, ultimately became a significant impediment. This video will delve into the initial advantage held by the Whites at the onset of the Civil War. However, it will unravel why exactly they failed, including the Whites' internal frailties, foreign interference, and Trotsky's adept leadership, which collectively precipitated the downfall that overshadowed what should have been their triumph. The White Army's susceptibility to internal weaknesses stands out as the paramount factor contributing to their defeat in the Russian Civil War. At the conflict's outset, the White Army boasted numerical superiority over the Reds, a force exclusively of Bolsheviks. With an estimated 40,000 Bolshevik Party members, the Red Army faced a diverse and ideologically fragmented White counterpart, consisting of various parties, paramilitary groups, and political entities. This diversity within the White Army, while initially advantageous in terms of sheer size, eventually proved to be its Achilles heel. The amalgamation of former czarists, progressives, and diverse socialist factions like the Cadets and Mensheviks fostered profound ideological and personal schisms among both soldiers and commanders. Suspicion and distrust permeated the ranks, hindering collaboration and information sharing regarding military strategy and enemy movements. Notably, divisions between monarchists and the Don Cossacks posed a formidable challenge. The latter, primarily concerned with safeguarding their region, declined further engagement after the White forces, led by General Denikin, reclaimed the Don region from the Bolsheviks in the south. This lack of a shared ideology left the White Army without a unifying purpose beyond their common opposition to the Bolsheviks, raising uncertainties about their objectives once the Bolshevik threat subsided. The leadership dynamic within the White Army did little to help these issues. General Denikin's admission, "I can do nothing with my army. I'm glad when it carries out my combat orders," underscores the difficulty in maintaining cohesion. An image problem further plagued the Whites, as they were perceived by many peasants as seeking to reinstate the oppressive Tsar. This perception was fueled by forceful displacement of peasants for supplies during the war. Particularly damaging was the leadership of Admiral Kolchak, designated Supreme Leader of the Whites, who aimed to unite the people under a monarchical belief. However, his ruthless suppression of his own socialists, coupled with disdain for the peasant majority, contributed to escalating desertions, hindering the White Army's efforts to garner popular support. Renowned historian Orlando Figes emphasizes this failure in addressing popular concerns, noting that the Whites made minimal efforts to develop policies appealing to peasants or minorities. In essence, the internal fractures, misguided leadership decisions, and failure to cultivate broader support among the populace collectively underscore the critical role played by the White Army's weaknesses in their ultimate defeat. Foreign intervention, a seemingly advantageous avenue for the White Army, unexpectedly contributed to their downfall, largely due to their own mismanagement. In the aftermath of the Russian Revolution, Western European monarchies, notably including Great Britain and Italy, were apprehensive about the burgeoning influence of socialism and its potential implications for their own governance structures. Viewing the Russian Civil War as an opportunity to thwart Bolshevik ascendancy and quell socialist ideologies worldwide, these foreign powers aligned themselves with the Whites. In Britain, influential figures like Winston Churchill advocated for direct military involvement in support of the Whites. However, the timing of the Civil War amid the ongoing First World War hindered parliamentary and public support for such an engagement. Despite this, the British government allocated £100 million worth of supplies to the White Army, reflecting a commitment to curbing Lenin and the Reds. Unfortunately, the misallocation and mismanagement of these funds, with factions using them for lavish lifestyles, fueled perceptions that the Whites were indifferent to the plight of the working classes. This misstep became potent fodder for Trotsky's propaganda machine. Other nations, including the USA, France, and Japan, extended greater involvement by sending soldiers to aid the Whites with tactical support in skirmishes. However, this intervention, driven more by self-interest than a genuine desire to thwart the Bolsheviks, failed to offer substantial assistance. Instead, it played into the hands of Red propaganda, which successfully painted the entire White Army as foreign invaders seeking to usurp land from the Russian peasantry. Consequently, support for the White cause dwindled. Allied intervention and the White Army's reliance on foreign aid became vulnerable targets for Red propaganda. The inability of the Whites to capitalize on their own propaganda opportunities, compounded by the brutality exhibited by both factions, further marginalized their narrative. The worthlessness of foreign intervention became evident when the British initiated communication with the Reds, signaling a pragmatic acknowledgement of the likely victors. This diplomatic maneuver underscored the futility of external support for the Whites, ultimately contributing to their undoing. A factor beyond the control of the Whites, yet crucial in their defeat, was the influential leadership of Trotsky during the Russian Civil War. In 1918, facing internal disintegration, Lenin appointed Trotsky as the Commissar for War. Leveraging his remarkable organizational acumen, Trotsky transformed a desperate mix of sailors and peasants into a formidable military force. Introducing stringent discipline and a hierarchical structure, he implemented the death penalty for effective enforcement, even deploying it for minor infractions to assert his authority and instill discipline. To bolster the Red forces, Trotsky controversially recalled thousands of Tsarist officers to train his troops, creating a ranking system within the military. This decision, met with resistance from prominent Bolsheviks like Stalin, exposed divisions within the party. Trotsky, backed by Lenin, went to extreme lengths to maintain order, resulting to abducting the families of Tsarist officers and appointing political commissars to ensure ideological compliance. While Trotsky's leadership was pivotal in shaping a formidable Red Army, it generated internal discord within the Bolsheviks over ruling through fear. Despite Trotsky's mastery of symbolic importance in military campaigns, demonstrated in the defense of Petrograd against the approaching White Army, his eloquence and morale-boosting efforts did not prevent a surge in desertions to over 4 million by 1921. Notably, a full-scale mutiny by Tsarist officers further questioned the myth of Trotsky's brilliance, prompting speculation that his prowess was exaggerated, perhaps perpetrated by Trotskyists post-war. Many historians concur, emphasizing that attributing Bolshevik success solely to a single personality, including Trotsky, oversimplifies the complex factors that contributed to their victory. The preeminent factor leading to the Bolshevik victory in the Civil War was undeniably the profound weaknesses and disunity within the White forces. Rather than presenting a formidable front, the White Army, soon after its inception, descended into one of the most dysfunctional military entities in modern history. Refusal among generals to collaborate and a glaring lack of cohesion within their ranks epitomized the disarray that plagued the White forces. Foreign intervention, while a potential turning point, exemplified how victory could have been achievable for the Whites. Despite possessing numerical superiority, military experience, and external backing, the White Army succumbed to mismanagement, squandering the opportunities presented by limited support. The disunity among various factions within the Whites proved to be a formidable impediment, overshadowing their collective capabilities. In conclusion, the unraveling of the White Army during the Russian Civil War exposes a narrative of squandered potential and internal discord. While foreign intervention and individual leadership, such as Trotsky's, played roles in shaping the conflict's course, it is the White Army's internal fractures and their inability to forge a cohesive front against the common adversary that stand out as the linchpin of their downfall. The myriad of ideological and personal divisions, mistrust among generals, and the failure to unite under a shared purpose all converge to sap the strength of the White forces. In essence, the disorganization within their ranks emerges as a pivotal factor, eclipsing their numerical advantage and military experience. As we delve into the annals of history, it becomes apparent that the White Army's internal disunity, rather than external factors, proved to be the defining catalyst for their ultimate defeat in the tumultuous landscape of the Russian Civil War. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video on the Russian Civil War. I hope this exploration into the complexities of the conflict, from the power struggles within Russia to the decisive factors contributing to the Whites' defeat, has been informative and engaging. Your choice to join me in unraveling this historical narrative is sincerely appreciated. If you found value in the content, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing for more insightful discussions. Your support fuels my passion for history, and I look forward to having you with me on future journeys through the annals of time. Thank you again for being a part of my audience.